As you probably already know, especially because we've shown many cases of it, the world of pet ownership is not as simple as people want you to believe, at least not when it comes to the fact that, while many people prefer more common pets like dogs and cats, or perhaps even a cute and adorable guinea pig, some people really want to go beyond, if we can put it that way, and try something a little stranger, more exotic, or simply bizarre. And if you thought our previous list had some strange creatures and pet owners, we have one more to surprise you. From people who own hyenas to a child washing a crocodile, here are the 19 most dangerous animals kept as pets. But before we get started, make sure to subscribe to our channel and leave your like. Now, let's get started. Number 1. Jessica, the pet hippopotamus. Now I'm ending on a high note, or better yet, a hippopotamus note. If you've never seen a hippopotamus before, you might have only experienced them through things like the game Hungry, Hungry Hippos, the Madagascar movies, or at zoos. They're fun creatures that are always hungry. All the time? Well, actually, hippos are one of the most dangerous animals in the world, by far. They can do things like run over you, capsize boats in the water, and, of course, kill people without much effort. So, this might surprise you, but there is a very famous pet hippopotamus in the world, and her name is Jessica. She was found when she was very young, in a state of extreme malnutrition, along the Blyde River in South Africa, and was taken to a rehabilitation center. This, in many ways, makes all the difference between a happy but strange story and a tragic one, because it means the baby hippo was one that wouldn't attack humans. Instead of following its natural instincts, the people who raised Jessica gave her everything she needed to live and interact with other hippos. And how do you see her? But what's curious is that Jessica has been called an ambassador for her species, and she even became a tourist attraction in South Africa, where people can go and pet her for a small fee. An interesting way to treat your pet, right? Monetizing it. Although this is a heartwarming story, there is a dark ending. Another person in South Africa also had a hippopotamus as a pet, and one day this hippopotamus literally bit him in half. So, with Jessica, her story might be the exception, not the rule. Number 2. Giant pythons. Snakes are a tricky subject when it comes to dangerous pets because when you have small species or even non-venomous ones, the worst you usually have to worry about is getting bitten if you annoy the animal. But for some people, they want to have the biggest snake possible. And apparently, kids love these huge snakes, like in the case of a girl who adores her pythons. The girl in question is named Emmy, and her reticulated pythons are named Sunny and Cher. Oh, and this isn't a romance where it was love at first sight or anything like that. Emmy has spent years with these snakes. The family bought them when Emmy was just 4 years old, and a few years later, she has a deep affection for them, which would be quite adorable, if not for the fact that these snakes are over 4.5 meters long and could easily crush her if they wanted to. Apparently, however, there are no such tendencies in these pythons. Both are very calm and gentle, and have shown no defensive or aggressive behavior toward the family. Do you think that if they snuggled with Emmy, it would be a case of, "I got you, babe"? You know, because they're named Sunny and Cher and all. Number 3. Owl. Now, I'll admit that having an owl as a pet isn't that strange. In fact, it was part of the Harry Potter story that many young witches and wizards had an owl as a pet. And in the same vein as that beloved story, I'm here to share one about a young girl and her snowy owl, who seem to be very close. The video shows the two of them hugging and kissing, with the feathered friend comfortable in her home. The little girl showers her friend with affection, and it seems like the owl returns it to some extent. The obvious question, though, is why would an owl be a dangerous pet if so many people have them? Well, in this specific case, it's about the owls themselves and how they are raised. Not much different from other animals I've shown. If you try to approach a truly wild owl, you'll likely be in trouble. However, if you raise it from basically a baby, the chances of it working out are much higher. This is a very important distinction because owls are known to be very territorial and will attack and even kill people and animals that come too close to the nest, even if it's unintentional. The fact is that the girl has a snowy owl that doesn't harm her severely, and that's a good thing, but it's not something that happens every time. Number 4. Kangaroo. Now, I get it. Kangaroos can be truly amazing creatures when seen from a distance or in movies and TV shows, but these are actually animals that can literally kick you so hard you'll submit without even thinking twice. So, who would be dumb enough to have a kangaroo as a pet? Well, it's simple. Someone who found a baby kangaroo and raised it as their own. Who would do that, you ask? Well, the answer is Australian comedian Jackson O'Doherty. He rescued a baby kangaroo from the side of a rural road near Sydney when it was just a few weeks old. He named her Damien, and they've been inseparable ever since. I'm going to grow up to be a strong kangaroo. Damien is a good girl. Damien even goes as far as chasing her dad around places like beaches for fun. Jackson went ahead and made all kinds of videos with young Damien, and they're indeed adorable together. It would be a different story, however, if he tried this with a full-grown, normal-sized kangaroo. Number 5. Pet lion. I talked about a pet lion in the last video, but it was a lioness that had been raised in a certain way to help herd sheep on a farm. This time we're talking about a male lion who is so comfortable with his owner that he's apparently more than happy to spend time on the couch. The man from Pakistan bought the cub and allowed the king of the jungle to have full freedom in his house. It's not always the best idea, but apparently the man doesn't mind much. Babar, the lion, already weighed over 12 stone, about 76 kilograms, when he was bought and devoured 17 pounds, about 7.7 kilograms, of raw meat every day. We can only imagine what he eats now, as he's probably fully grown, and it's been 2 years since this story was shared. The man happily allows his furry friend to roam freely around the family's luxurious bungalow, where he has his own king-sized bed with a double mattress and air conditioning. In other words, the lion gets more love and attention than certain people I know. What class? Obviously, there's a huge risk in having a lion as a pet because if it decides to turn wild, it would be a big problem for the family and others. Not to mention that some of its animal instincts might not be fully domesticated. But does this seem to bother or worry the man who owns him? Not much. He's probably bragging to everyone he knows, saying he has a lion as a pet. Number 6. Iguana. Now, I admit that if you see one, you'll probably want to raise one, and I'm sure the iguana won't rank too high on this list. But that doesn't mean iguanas aren't dangerous or that they can't cause problems if you're not careful. However, as a lizard and usually a small one, you generally don't have to fear them being dangerous. This brings us to a very special video that will probably surprise you in several ways, because here we have an iguana living happily in someone's backyard, and yet it behaves like a dog, especially when its owner comes home to greet it. Yes, really. The person comes home and says, "Come on, buddy, come on, buddy," and the iguana happily goes to greet its owner. I want to know what kind of training regime this man has for his lizard, because I want to replicate this with other animals and make a fortune. I'm not joking, or at least not totally joking. This is really something cool, as you don't usually see animals like iguanas behaving this way. Normally they're active only when hunting for food, chasing a predator, or fighting one. So seeing one act like a dog is something special. And if you remember the last video, these lizards seem to be just fine acting like dogs. Number 7. Reindeer. Now, before you say something like, "Reindeer aren't that dangerous," you need to remember that reindeer, well, they are deer at heart, and therefore have antlers, and can sometimes be skittish by nature. A dangerous combination if you're on the wrong side of those antlers. But for one, the story is different. A calf was abandoned by its mother when it was still young in the forests of northern Finland and was rescued by a boy before finding its way to Mrs. Tukkonen. After raising it for years, the reindeer went from being antisocial to eating food off a plate at the dining table. Now, that's what you'd call proper raising. Just hope it doesn't step out in front of your vehicle going 100 kilometers per hour. Number 8. The empty animal ark. Now, here's a twist on our usual stories, if you will, because I'm not just talking about a couple who recently acquired an exotic or dangerous animal. Actually, I'm talking about someone who has a whole bunch of them in their own backyard. Welcome to the empty animal ark, where you'll find over 90 wild animals inside. Let's take a look at what's inside. Oh, look, it's Dr. Prakash Empty, along with his wife Mandakini. They are the ones responsible for setting up the place to create an animal rescue shelter. A truly wonderful motivation. Their efforts were recognized as a rescue shelter in 1991, and the animals they house include jackals, leopards, hyenas, porcupines, an Indian python, a crocodile, peacocks, sloth bears, and more. The shelter is a popular attraction for visitors, especially children, but given all the animals they have, you can't help but wonder, how did all this start? Well, it all began when Dr. Prakash realized that the local tribes were hunting all kinds of animals for food, even their young. So he made a deal with them to spare the young ones in exchange for things like rice, which they accepted. His collection started growing with a baby monkey, and from there, the number of animals just kept increasing. While this isn't something I would recommend for everyone to do, it's a very noble effort and something to be admired if reasonably possible. Hunting animals for food is acceptable in the right areas and forms, but killing their young, well, that harms their population and is, in a way, cruel. Without a doubt, this is another reason why the Empties started the park, and many animals now live happily there as a result. Number 9. Tiger. Now, you really should have seen this one coming, because tigers, for some reason or another, are one of the most sought-after exotic animals, and people go to great lengths just to get one. For example, you remember Joe Exotic, don't you? How could you forget? He went on to breed all sorts of tigers at his infamous zoo and claimed to be as close as possible to them, but then many of them attacked him or his co-workers, resulting in serious injuries. Ah, what fun, right? And then there are certain people who actually risk illegal activities to bring a tiger cub home, including, and I'm not kidding here, someone once trying to hide one inside a suitcase. It was unconscious, just to be sneaked through an airport and sent to them. And we wonder why people seem idiotic most of the time. Number 10. Cheetahs. Now, you might expect stories about big cats to be about lions and tigers. However, believe it or not, cheetahs are quite popular as exotic pets, if we can even call them that. The next story is about a cheetah who is very close friends with a young child. This is about Milaine and his sister Kayla, who have two very unique pets, a pair of cheetahs. The siblings formed an extraordinary bond with the creatures after growing up with them in their home in South Africa. They don't hesitate to share their toys with the two big cheetahs, affectionately known as Waku and Skyla, and often take them for rides in the family's mini jeep. But certainly, these two cheetahs didn't just appear in their lives, right? Well, you're right. They live near the Root Game Lodge in the Western Cape, South Africa, and one of the cheetahs there gave birth to 4 cubs. Milan and Kayla's parents adopted 2 of the cubs so they could raise them. To be fair, they didn't plan to keep them forever and even help the cheetahs learn to hunt on their own because they want them to return to the wild one day. But for now, they're just the children's pets, as well as part of the household. Number 11. Brown bear. Now, this is a real story, and it's going to get even more real and understandable in a few moments because I'm going to paint a picture for you. It's winter in your country or state or wherever you live, and you have the desire to warm up as quickly as possible. What do? Well, the typical answer is to put on warm clothes, grab blankets, start a fire, drink some hot chocolate, contemplate life, and snuggle in bed. But for Svetlana and Yuri Pantelenko, their preferred method is to go and snuggle with a 300-pound brown bear. Oh yes, what better way to warm your bones than to get close to an animal that could literally kill you in seconds without any problem? The only place stranger than Russia is Florida, just saying. Oh, and just to clarify something, this is not a small, compact bear. It's over 7 feet tall. However, for Svetlana and Yuri, it seems easy, as the bear is very friendly and playful, just as you'd imagine a pet bear to be. It turns out the bear loves people and is very social. Despite what people might think, it's not aggressive, and no one has ever been bitten. Should we be happy for them? Well, yes, we should. But are we going to risk our lives by adopting a brown bear as a pet? Definitely not. Number 12. Wolf dog. Here's a creature that's easy to explain in terms of why many people find it dangerous. Because the wolf dog, as it's known, is indeed a dog with wolf heritage. Primarily a wild wolf crossed with a domesticated dog breed. Due to its nature, it can be an excellent protector of the home, but it can also attack in a way that's very similar to a wolf when defending itself. Someone could take another person away from their home and family, and as a result, the wolf dog is a bit of a tricky pet to have. Not because of its wolf-like tendencies, but because it's not exactly legal in all countries. Yes, this is a creature considered so dangerous in the eyes of some that it's completely banned in places like Norway, because they simply don't want to risk harming people. And still, people continue to keep them as pets. Number 13. Sloth. I'll be honest, sloths. Well, they're slow, lazy, and prefer to stay in the trees all day long, and we just let them do that. They are the embodiment of what many humans would like to be, but can't, and that's why many people hate them. You know, except for the family that was more than happy to adopt one. Ginny and Terry Koenig are the proud owners of Enzo, a sloth that was raised in captivity. Apparently, the couple had wanted a sloth for a long time, and why? Well, no one can really say, but clearly, they have pretty unique tastes in animals, for one reason or another. However, the ironic part is that they really had to put in the effort to take care of the sloth. they had to make all the necessary preparations to ensure the environment was suited to the sloth's natural habitat, and they did all of this without a care. Oh, and if you're wondering how sloths can be dangerous, well, they're kind of like One Punch Man. When they get serious, you're in trouble. Number 14. Koala. Don't be fooled. Although it's true that koalas look like fuzzy little bears hiding in the trees of Australia, these animals are actually quite dangerous, mainly because they eat eucalyptus leaves, which are toxic. That's right, they eat poison to ward off predators. They're like crazy little bears, and we let it slide because they're just so adorable. Anyway, there was once a koala named Henry who found himself in danger after being separated from his mother. He was rescued by an 11-year-old girl who took care of him before releasing him back into the wild. But then, Henry got into another dangerous situation, so the girl had to intervene once again. It wasn't until a few attempts that Henry finally managed to return to the wild and become the wild koala he was always meant to be. Number 15. Kojek. In a small water pool in the backyard of a house in Indonesia lives Kojek, the crocodile. Now, normally, this would be a story that ends with animal protection authorities intervening and trying to remove the crocodile from the yard without injuring anyone, a situation that, by its very nature, could quickly turn into a nightmare for everyone involved. It's a story as old as time itself. After all, who would imagine that someone could actually keep a crocodile as a pet without causing a huge mess? However, not this time, because Kojek, the crocodile, is a pet of the family led by Erwin, and this croc is definitely what you would expect from a pet. Many might think that having a crocodile at home would be a huge source of concern, but apparently, Kojek fits well in this role. He has spent most of his life under the care of this family, and it seems there's nothing unusual about him living peacefully in his small space in the backyard. The crocodile would be like this, apparently. Kojek spends his days in a small water channel at the back of Erwin's garden. The space is relatively modest, but adequate for a crocodile who doesn't seem to have much ambition to leave the place. The family's laundry dries right next to him, and Erwin's 3 children are free to play ball over the turquoise-colored ceramic tiles that run parallel to the crocodile. Daily life is surprisingly peaceful, even considering the animal's wild nature. Now, you might think this would be a recipe for disaster, especially when you remember that crocodiles are initial strike predators and can't resist attacking food nearby. Number 16. Wild boar. Hearing that someone has a pig isn't that strange, but hearing that they decided to adopt a 45-kilogram wild boar, well, that's a bit different. Many people might imagine that raising a wild boar is an impossible or even dangerous task, but somehow, this couple decided it was something they could do. However, once again, this is not the story you might expect. Often, when talking about wild animals, the idea of adopting them sounds almost unthinkable, especially one as large as a wild boar. The couple found the wild boar in the forest, alone, without proper food, and basically on the brink of death. It was weak, malnourished, and seemed hopeless. Seeing it in this state of suffering led the couple to make an impulsive, yet compassionate decision to rescue it and care for it. And after rescuing it, what happened with the wild boar surprised everyone. It responded well to human care and, despite its wild instincts, was able to adapt to a new, friendlier, and safer environment. Upon seeing it in its weakened state, they decided to save it, and for them, the rest is history. But what might be even more surprising is how a wild animal, traditionally living in habitats far from humans, can change its behavior over time. The wild boar, now healthy, started adopting some behaviors that are much more common in dogs, like obedience to certain commands and even a desire to be near its owners. What may surprise you, however, is that, despite being a wild animal, it adopted some dog-like qualities while under human care. For example, it will actually pose on the stairs when the owners ask, something that would be unexpected for an animal that would normally be busy foraging for food or defending itself in the wild. This is something that, while it seems cute, also raises questions about how much animals can be domesticated when raised in a controlled environment. Ah, the world we live in. Number 17. Puma. Now, if you're expecting to hear stories about big cats in places they definitely shouldn't be, I might have a few for you, and I'll start with one about a puma. And no, I'm not making a joke about an older attractive woman. Get that out of your head. Although the idea of having a big cat as a pet seems somewhat eccentric, many people believe they can own one without considering the difficulties and space required to ensure the animal's well-being. In 2016, Alexander Dmitriev and his wife Mariah decided to adopt a young puma named Messi and raise him as a pet in their small studio apartment in Penza, Russia. First of all, this is not the smartest thing to do. Having a large animal in a small space rarely works well, even when it's something like a dog, which obviously a puma is not. However, for some reason, the couple believed it would be possible to handle it, perhaps out of ignorance or a passion for the idea of having a big cat at home. To try and avoid what could happen, the couple established a routine for the puma to ensure he was well cared for and wouldn't make a huge mess, which is always possible with a big cat. Of course, the routine was also created to prevent the puma from getting bored, which could result in destructive or even aggressive behavior. The big cat ate twice a day, with a diet consisting of turkey, beef, a bit of chicken breast, and some bones. This was vital to ensure he grew healthy, but it was still a big challenge. With a growing number of followers on social media, Instagram, and over 2 million views on YouTube in a short period of time, Messi became something of a local celebrity. Videos of the puma doing cute things or interacting with the family attracted a lot of attention, which may have been what motivated the owners to keep sharing those moments. Additionally, the puma's presence on social media showed how exotic animals are increasingly being treated like celebrities, a phenomenon that's becoming more common, especially among digital influencers. And if you think about stories like this that you've heard before, especially from us, you know that one thing people can count on when it comes to their pets nowadays is trying to make them social media stars, because clearly they're good for nothing else in their owners' minds. It's something that makes us reflect on the relationship between animals and their owners, and how exotic animals like the Puma Messi are being treated as entertainment objects instead of living beings that need proper care. Number 18. Child's crocodile. Now, I'll tell another crocodile story later, but I'll start with this one because you'd swear it would end badly for the child in question. However, that's not the case. Apparently, crocodiles were once a very popular pet worldwide, alongside alligators, because they were seen as exotic and cute pets, until they grew too large to handle and contain, at which point they were released. During that period, many families thought they could care for such imposing animals without thinking about the consequences of their growth. But in Indonesia, which ironically is also the setting for our other crocodile story, they have a less rigid view of these animals, to the point where a small child can apparently play with a 1.4-meter-long crocodile and not be harmed in any way. This cultural perspective on the treatment of wild animals is still something that causes surprise and even admiration, considering the dangers these animals can pose, especially as they grow. To clarify, the family didn't buy the crocodile when it was already large, but when it was very, very small. Contrary to what many would imagine, they adopted it as a young hatchling, without truly understanding how quickly this little animal could transform into a much larger and more unpredictable creature. And these crocodiles are known for growing at an incredible rate, so before long, they had a crocodile bigger than the child itself. This would surely cause concern for many other families, but in the case of this child, she was apparently in tune with the animal, knowing how to interact with it respectfully. She was playing with it, but it was perfectly fine during playtime, at least for now. The interaction between the child and the crocodile might seem like a mix of cuteness and risk, but it reflects the strong bond between human and animal, something that can be cultivated from childhood when done with caution and supervision. Additionally, the child in question wasn't just playing with the crocodile. She was completely fearless and had no problem getting close and interacting with her pet. This is undoubtedly rare behavior and a reflection of the mutual trust the child and the crocodile developed. This apparently impressed her family in such a way that they expect her to become a zookeeper someday. Just imagine that interview. Are you good with animals? Want to see pictures of me and my pet crocodile? Well, you're hired. Of course, it all depends on how the animal is treated, but the idea of a child with a crocodile being so calm that it impresses both her family and anyone observing her is, at the very least, fascinating. Number 19. Hyenas. Hyenas are a type of pet we've talked about before, but in that case, it was a specific instance. Now let's talk more generally about whether they can make good pets or not, because some people truly believe they can raise one of these African creatures, often with mixed results. Although the idea of having a hyena at home might sound exciting to some, the reality is quite different, and it often turns out to be an enormous challenge. A hyena breeding expert, a phrase I never thought I'd say on YouTube, stated that the biggest issue with potential owners is a lack of patience when trying to train them. Humans with patience? That's hard to believe. Hyenas are not dogs or cats. They are wild creatures with very different instincts. When treated with disrespect or a lack of understanding, hyenas can easily become aggressive or even destructive, which can create serious problems for anyone trying to keep them at home. Another thing to remember is that, even if you get them when they're young, they are not a domesticated species. In fact, they are wild animals that, in their natural habitat, follow instinctual behaviors to hunt, live in packs, and survive. Who would have thought? And as a result of this, you need to treat them with respect, just like any wild animal requires, or things are going to get a little complicated. Although attempts have been made to domesticate certain species, the hyena still retains its wild side intact. The key point here is also that you need to feed them the right way. They're used to hunting their meals in the African jungle, not in your apartment or at the corner diner. Their natural diet is quite varied, but it mainly consists of raw meat, and there's no way to substitute this with dog food or leftover human food. If not fed properly, they can develop severe health issues and become extremely dissatisfied. Oh, and if you try to keep your hyena in a small space, like your 500 square foot apartment in New York, it's not going to end well for you. Hyenas are large and need much more space than most people realize. They are not animals for living in cramped captivity. They need an environment that simulates, as much as possible, free space and the freedom to move, hunt, and explore. So, make sure you have something like a backyard or a space for them to run, at least semi-free. Hyenas are highly active animals, and if they don't have an appropriate space to expend their energy, they will find other ways to entertain themselves, which usually doesn't include something you want to see destroyed. Or be rational and get a dog, which will be much easier to take care of and definitely won't cause as many problems. Thank you so much for watching the video. If you enjoyed our content, make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Don't forget to check out other interesting content appearing on your screen right now, and I'll see you in the next video. See you next time.